I'm willing to take a look at your legislation. I'm going to have my remarks, though, related to a larger issue that I hope deals with the problem generally, not a solution to that problem, except some bills that I have in that are in other committees, because I think that we've got a major problem we've got to deal with at a larger scale. So I thank you for holding the hearing, looking at higher education and the possible role of bankruptcy for student loan debt. I want to make clear that I believe we must look at the entire higher education ecosystem to solve these challenges. Recommendations to modify the bankruptcy code would address only symptoms of a larger problem. If we don't correct the underlying causes, then we're closing the barn door after the horse has gotten out. Nearly 44 million Americans owe more than $1.7 trillion in student loans, with the average graduate having debt of over $28,000. The amount of the outstanding student loan debt has doubled in just the past 10 years. Related to increasing the amount of debt is the increasing cost of college education. In the last 20 years, the cost of attending a four-year public college has more than doubled. Going back further, since 1978, it's had an astronomical percentage increase. This is more than double the rate of inflation and shows that there is a problem with how we're funding higher education. The federal government currently owns 92% of the outstanding student loan debt, and that percentage continues to increase. Federal loans are available to a large portion of the population, regardless of the ability to repay, and well in excess of need. This provides colleges with almost a limitless supply of funding, which in turn creates no incentives for college to reduce costs, contributing to higher and higher levels of debt. Many senators have suggested looking at how to make sure schools are more accountable for the financial outcomes of their students. That's kind of hard to do because every college is different, and federal standards may affect some very positively and some negatively and still not solve the problem. I'm also a strong proponent of making sure that people who are thinking about attending higher education are fully informed. So I've introduced three bills this Congress, similar to bills that were introduced in previous Congresses. If we ever have a higher education reauthorization, I hope to get these included. But this would provide resources to empower students to better understand college costs so that they can limit borrowing to what they need and can afford. These bills would provide students and their families with better information about the cost of college, from initially searching for colleges through the application process to accepting financial aid. Increasing transparency and ensuring potential students have this kind of information will help lead to more informed choices and hopefully more price competition between colleges. Several members on the other side of the aisle have urged the Biden administration to cancel $10,000 to $50,000 in student loan debt. This is a questionable idea. Debt forgiveness would be highly regressive and overwhelmingly benefit the wealthy at the expense of others. The administration also lacks the authority to do this. Even Speaker of the House Pelosi herself recently said, and I want to quote, "The president can't do it," so that's not even a discussion. We must consider the moral hazard and the cost to taxpayers. The majority of Americans decide to not attend higher education and pursue careers not requiring a college degree. That's their choice. Others decide to take out loans and attend college, and most are able to afford. That's their choice. I don't think that we should ask those who did not attend college to pick up the tabs for those who did. So I urge my colleagues to look at all the factors that are driving high levels of debt in higher education and closely examine the costs associated with any reform. Those remarks do not preclude my considering legislation that is suggested this very day and the purpose of this hearing. If I could just elaborate a little bit on why I think we have this bad problem. One of it goes back to a lot of bad federal policies. If you remember, before Obamacare, the federal program was put in Obamacare to help pay for some of the cost of Obamacare, and the federal government was supposed to make a lot of money off of these loans by setting an interest rate, service interest rate. We haven't made any money off of it like it was supposed to be. But when you have banks giving out loans, I think there was more of a consideration of how much loan you should take out as opposed to what a government direct loan gives. And so we have a federal policy that encourages young people to get into more debt than they should. We also have federal policy that encourages our universities to tell students the maximum amount they can learn or loan that they can borrow. And consequently, I think they borrow more than they should. I remember when President Mason was she was president of the University of Iowa. She'd come to my office and we'd gradually talk about this problem of student debt. She would remind me at that time, maybe the average debt was about $29,000. She said if these students would borrow what it took for room and board and tuition and books, there'd be several $1,000 less debt. My university, Northern Iowa, and I think Iowa State University, have started advising students, don't borrow all you can borrow. And I think they have reduced the average student debt by about $3,000 per year. And so some of these efforts are going to pay price, but we shouldn't be encouraging people to borrow more than they need to borrow. And we don't give enough consideration to that, so we have a bigger problem than we ought to have. I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop.
Thanks, Senator Grassley. Senator Cornyn,